Now to begin the road. Broken land, ripped like a piece of cloth. Iron cartwheel rumbling in the night. Hidden man, consistent in the dark. Sea of day clean washing on the shore. Heart of orphan seeking orphanage. Now to begin the road. The bleeding music of a peasant man starts like a song but fades into a groan. The cupric star will burn as blue as death. His hopes are whitened, starched with grief and pain. Yet questing man his heavy laden cart, whose iron wheels will rumble in the night, whose iron wheel will spark against the stone or granite burden of the universe. Now to begin the road, hidden cartman fumbling for a star, brooding city like a mound of coal, till journey done, till prostrate, coughing hour, with sudden welcome take him to his dream, with sudden farewell send him to his grave.
The cartman of Decline is something that the whole rural population is very familiar with. The hardships of the cartman, the pain he goes through, the expectations of the journey. And these poems always had a very striking importance for them. They would readily understand his words and his images and pictures. Because very often there are people on that dray taking greens and ground provisions to the market for sale. The point was that we saw the poet as an artist of a peculiar kind of sensitivity who could make reality clearer to the rest of us. And in fact, what I said there was not a question of theory or theorization. It was what Martin Carter was actually engaged in doing. And this is what is meant by those lines in the poem, in the foreword, dealing with the poet being like someone with a watering can, nurturing plants. Taking the people's experiences, refining them, giving them back to the people, to strengthen the people, a kind of ideological nourishment, so to speak.
Good evening to you, coming in tonight with the voices there of two of our founding fathers, Martin Carter, better known as a poet, and of course my mentor, E.U.C. Kwayana, then Sidney King. The Cartman of Decline. Those of us who are old enough will remember the cartman leaving the villages and driving that dray cart, donkey cart, horse cart down to Georgetown, taking goods, taking people. The cartman of Decline. The cartman, of course, was synonymous with Decline. And Martin Carter, of course, capturing the cartman of Decline. A wonderful poem. Good evening to you and welcome to Politics 101. I usually say share the link. Sherrod says share the live. Whatever it is, you all share it. Share it because tonight we continue our series. Big show tonight, of course. Roysdale Forde is on tonight, one of the contenders for the leader of the People's National Congress. We have a doubleheader this weekend, the Congress of the PNC and the Congress of the AFC last night. We had Sherrod Duncan on with his team, and tonight Roysdale Forde is on. So please share the live, share the link, let everyone know that we are ready to roll. We continue this week. Tomorrow night, we expect Amanza Walton Desir to be here. And of course, on Thursday night, I think we are going to have a double head on Thursday night in Aubrey Norton and Nigel Hughes. We may have a double head on that night because Friday, of course, is the start of Congress, and you all will be tuned in to that. Again, welcome all of you. Yes, some of you are saying you remember Quayana as when you all were little boys and little girls. And yes, it's still alive, 99 years old. And we're praying God that he goes to 100 and continues to live. The last of the founding fathers, Burnham, Jagan, founding mothers too, they were mothers also. Burnham, Jagan, Ashton Chase, Sidney King, J.P. Latchman Singh, Jaina Ryan Singh, Janet Jagan, Jane Phillips Gay, Winifred Gaskin, Jocelyn Hubbard, Clinton Wong. I am sure I'm leaving out some of those men and women who were there in 1953 when it all started. Universal adult suffrage, our first election, and a big win for the PPP, not this PPP, but the nationalist PPP, big win. And of course, the British invaded Guyana, overthrew that government in their own colony because they feared that communism was going to come to Guyana. And the communism that they were talking about was giving trade unions the right to organize, workers the right to form trade unions, lifting the ban on literature coming from so-called socialist countries, lifting the ban on literature coming from Black America, taking away control of the schools from the churches and making them secular. For those actions, the British invaded Guyana and overthrew the government after 133 days. Good evening to all of you. Good evening, Jamal, Aziz. It was nice seeing you up there in West Berbice. I was in Hope Town on Saturday. Under sad circumstances because I went to a funeral. But as you all know, a funeral is a place for very good political interaction. And I want to say thanks to all the Hope Towers, all of you who managed to come up and have a word with me. And those of you who whispered in my ears, those of you who spoke aloud, but restored and renewed my confidence that Guyanese people are not asleep. They are not asleep. They are not asleep. I know that, and that was confirmed when I went to Hope Town. And I know I don't get up to that part of the country very often, and I took the little abusing that I get because when I go to West Berbice, I stop at Bella Drum, and I don't come up that side. And I'm hoping to correct that. So if you're from Uptown and you are in the audience, big up. I love you all very much. Good evening to the pastor if she's listening. Quite a stirring sermon. I'm a sermon man. When I go to church, whether it's funeral, church, wedding, wherever, I like to listen to sermons. Good evening to all of you. We're going to have a big sermon tonight. We're going to have a big sermon because Roysdale Forde is here and he is vying for the leadership of the PNC. And you all know it's not an easy race. It's not an easy race. I think we're ready. We're ready to roll. Let me bring in Roysdale. Roysdale, my brother, good evening.
Good night, Dr. Hines. Thank you for having me on your show. Good night to the audience.
I know your father was a policeman, right?
Yes, he was. He was.
So
Indeed.
you all, as police family, you all move around a little, huh?
No, we lived largely in Ivleary, um, just the Kingston area. We lived in Georgetown.
In Georgetown. So you're a tongue boy.
Yes, I am. I am.
Have you spent time in West Bobby's during your campaign?
Yes, I've been to West Babis. I've been to a number of villages there: Belladrum, Hooptown, number 28, the Lovely Last area. So I've been along the Region 5 area.
Wonderful, wonderful. Roysdale, let's move right into the interview tonight. Um, it's not often my study of political parties in the English-speaking Caribbean, the big established political parties. It's not often that an incumbent leader is being challenged. That you go right back to the formation of political parties in the 1940s, coming right through. Your own party, the People's National Congress, how many leaders? Five?
Five.
Burnham, right? Five now?
Five.
Five. Huh?
Five leaders, Dr. Hines.
Five leaders. And the PNC was born in 1957. So it's almost 67 years. Five leaders. It's not often that people challenge the incumbent. And often when an incumbent is challenged, it means that it must be something fundamental, I am arguing, that would lead to an incumbent being challenged. What is it? What is it that prompted you to make a bid for the leadership of the PNC and to challenge an incumbent who won a large chunk of the vote the last time around? Roysdale?
Yes, Dr. Hines. I thought we lost the audio there.
You lost the audio.
So I'm hearing you now. I'm hearing you again, Dr. Hines.
Yeah.
Dr.
I'm saying, what is it that prompted you to make a bid for the leadership at this time? Because you're making a bid for the leadership of the party against a leader who won 70 odd, maybe 80 odd percent of the vote the last time. There must be something fundamental that has prompted you. Talk to us.
Yes, Dr. Hanks. There is something fundamental. As you will recall, on the 28th of March, when I indicated my intention to contest for the leadership of the party, I pointed out that what was underpinning it was not any personal animosity in relation to in relation to Aubrey Norton, Dr. Hanks, but it was in relation to the fact that I felt that the party was at a serious juncture in its history. The country was at a serious juncture in its history. I felt that Mr. Norton and I had different ideas about where the direction of the party should go and how it should progress. We would have seen differences which would have emerged between us over the last month or two in terms of the way in which the opposition is led. I believe that we need to be a bit more aggressive, we need to be a bit more dynamic. I believe that we need to interface with our community, organize them. I believe that we need to establish a stronger social movement to confront the issues in our society. Um, Whether we adore Mr. Norton or not, we could objectively say that in relation to those matters that I would have mentioned, that we would have in many instances, and this is the opinion of a wide cross section of the country and our support base, they feel that we would have underperformed, the opposition would have underperformed, we would not have tackled the government and tackled the issues which were at the center of the people's consciousness and concern. So I believe that I have offered the party a new pathway, a way in which we focus on building the party, being more interactive with the coalition members, a possibility of starting an economic program and an agenda for the empowerment of our supporters, the need to establish a new dynamic in the society.
And Roysdale, you in the very beginning you mentioned two things, that it's a pivotal moment in the history of the party and pivotal moment in the history of our country. And I want you to elaborate on what is it that makes this moment in the party pivotal, and I suppose by extension, what makes this moment in our country's history pivotal to the point that you feel that it needs a different kind of leadership trajectory.
Dr. Hines, the party, by any stretch of the imagination, is an essential part of the consciousness of the Guyanese country, Guyanese nation. The party is almost 68 years of age. The party from the period of 1992 to now would have spent a considerable period of time, most of the time, say 5 years, in opposition. Our party is committed, as one of its founding principles, the commitment to social justice, the commitment to equality in our society. By virtue of the fact that we would have been in opposition for most of those periods, those years, we would have failed essentially to discharge the mandate and the vision of all the creators of the People's National Congress reform. We are currently in opposition at the time when this country is experiencing its largest economic growth in its history. The resources that are available to this country now has never been in existence before. We have a budget recently passed this year of $1.146 trillion, almost 60%, almost $670 billion are really allocated for mortar, bricks, hospitals, construction, that sort of work. In a country where it is still the fastest growing economy in the world, about 50% of our people live in abject poverty. When we look at the educational system, it does not produce the children and convey and confer on them the quality of education that they need, not only to make them viable members of society, but for the circumstances of the economy and where we're going as a country. When you look at the common entrance of the SSE results, we see almost 16 to 17,000 children annually writing this exam. Dr. Hines, apart from the 1% who would appear in the newspapers, and we're happy for them, who will go to Queen's College and Bishops, St. Rose's and the other top schools, almost 50% of our children fail basic literacy. We have recently, a report came out last weekend from UNICEF, which indicated a total of 60% of our children are suffering some form of malnutrition, some form of hunger deficiency. We have 40% who experience medium, as according to that assessment, medium malnutrition, and 20% experience chronic malnutrition. These are the circumstances that exist in society at a very social level, a very economic level. We have the issue of the failure to provide livable wages to the teachers and other public servants. We have the government's continued violation of the Constitution. So when we put this all together, it is a dangerous cocktail in terms of where we are as a country, in terms of the obligation and the duty of the party to respond and to provide the sort of leadership that is necessary. Across the length and breadth of the country, it is the opinion of even our staunchest supporters that we have not done what they expect us to do. They do not believe that we have articulated clearly a position that would have attracted the wide cross-section of the country. They don't believe that we would have been aggressive enough in relation to the issues. Recently, we would have seen the virtual withdrawal of the Guyana Teachers Union strike. I believe that a significant reason why that strike would have terminated or come to a premature end would largely have been the failure to provide the sort of political leadership and support in relation to that strike. I am very much committed to that issue. As you know, I appeared in that case, and as part of the argument, myself and Darren, we were able to move the law um, in a serious way, in a serious advancement, in articulating a position which would have seen, for the first time in the Commonwealth Caribbean and certainly Guyana by consequence, a situation where the court declared that you have a constitutional right to strike. You would have seen the court declare that when you go on strike in circumstances where the employer, the state, would have propagated or created circumstances for that strike, you're entitled to payment. I don't believe that the political opposition as a whole um, took that as a sufficient weapon in its arsenal, in its armory for the advancement of workers' rights in this country. I don't believe that there's any vast difference between the political movement, the political struggle that must take place, and the advancement of labor and labor issues. I believe that they are completely connected, they're inseparable, and we would have done a disservice by trying to separate them, by trying to articulate a proposition that protest is an action whose time as a weapon, as a mechanism, is no longer suitable for the country in which we live. I believe, having regard to the gross violations, the gross inequalities that permeate the society, protest is an essential weapon. So that is one of the fundamental differences which would have emerged over the past couple of weeks in relation to the direction that the party would have gone or should have gone. We have the issue of the coalition. I'm very much committed to coalition politics, not simply saying so and making it a thought. I believe that we need to deepen and expand coalition politics. We need to grow it. We need to ensure that the labor movement forms part of the coalition. We make it part of a serious consensual sort of movement, a social justice movement. And these are critical building blocks for an effective opposition. We would have seen the virtual exclusion, I would say, of APNU's chairmanship away from the PNC. The contention being advanced is that there would have been no meetings for 2 years. I believe that that is unacceptable if it is true. We need to ensure that the coalition is strong, the coalition is dynamic, and continually renewed in terms of where we go as a political party. Dr. Heinze pointed out that Mr. Norton would have been elected with a considerable majority of the votes. I recognize that. But I believe in terms of where we go and in terms of how the party functions, we need to have that sort of dynamism and that sort of support that he was elected with in the party translated into the sort of leadership that is consistent with that sort of support.
Roysdale, you've listed a litany of issues there, and I'm going to probe you further on some of those issues as we go through the hour. But I want to ask you two overarching questions. The first one is this. When the PNC was formed in the 1950s, it was a party that was formed to, in a sense, oversee the transition of the country from a colony to an independent state. We saw a big realignment at the end of the 1980s with the end of the Cold War and the world, in a sense, undergoing tremendous change. And we saw under Hoyt's leadership, the party, in a sense, recasting itself to meet the new challenges of the post-Cold War era. And I'm arguing that, and I think you have said so in your opening comments, that as we move into the era of the petro state, we are seeing another big realignment in our politics. And the theory is that if there is an alignment in the world and an alignment in the country, then the parties and the trade unions and other public organizations in the country have to adapt to that realignment, that change. And so I'm asking you, from your perspective, what kind of party is needed for this new era? I mean, Burnham obviously was clear about what kind of party was needed for the transition for what I call from plantation to nation, right? The PPP and the PNC they were about nationhood. And Hoyt, as he faced the challenge of the end of the Cold War, realized that the party had to pivot. And he brought into being a new kind of ideological direction that deviated somewhat from Burnham's nationalist socialist ideology. I'm asking you, as we move into the era of the petrol state, what kind of party you envisage that is needed for this new era?
Um, Dr. Hayes, I believe we need a political party that is rooted in the consciousness of the Guyanese society as to where we are now. I believe that we need a political party that is rooted in that consciousness, that manifests itself in articulating a program and an agenda relative to the challenges that we face. In our society, and this may be my personal ideological position, I believe that where we are now, in the face of the immense and pervasive social inequalities in our society, we need a party that stands for social justice. We need a party that stands for Guyanese. We need a party that stands and articulates principles in relation to a nationalist agenda. I believe that we need to focus on growing Guyana in a fair and equitable way. We need to have a party that recognizes the role of business and the role of business as a responsible partner in our society. We need to understand that we need to be the party that argues for the equality of race, equality of gender. I see the People's National Congress reform as a political party that will function relative to the current time that we live in and the current challenges that we face. It doesn't require us, because I believe that we have come full circle in a strange sort of way, almost to the very point to where our independence leaders stood, have a regard to the now that we are now open, quote unquote, open society. We're a society in which we have the serious influx of investment from abroad. Many persons would argue that there's a sort of recapitalization from the West in our society. We need to ensure that those companies that come into our country are responsible partners, that they operate ultimately whilst they're here to make a profit, that ultimately there is a situation in which they are functioning within the context of the laws and not to the disadvantage of the Guyanese people. So without necessarily putting an ideological appellation to the political party that I'm a member of now, I prefer to say that it must be a party grounded in the current realities of the Guyanese society, without being too dogmatic in calling itself a working class party, or presenting itself as a party that is only catering for the business class. I believe that there is sufficient resources, sufficient things that are going wrong in our society, that the party must be ultimately representative of all the different interests in our society. So I favor the party representing itself as the head of a movement, of a national sort of consensus, a national compact and partnership that mediates the differences, the conflicts inherent in all of us living in a society where there's so much wealth and there's still at the same time so much want and need and inequality in our society.
In case you're just joining us, we're chatting this evening with Roysdale Forde, contender for the top spot in the People's National Congress. Roysdale, in politics, the party is important, the membership and the society are important, But the person who's vying for the leadership is also important. And often the most successful leaders are those who are able to absorb the energies of their time. One could argue that the Burnhams and the Jagans and the Sydney Kings and so on were able to absorb the yearning of our people for independence. And hence, and we can go further field to the Eric Williams and Barrows and Manleys, etc. And to say that they were able to absorb the energies of the people. And you have outlined the present, the movement towards a petrol state, the increase in inequality, the especially racial inequality, the bringing of our country back into the sphere of global politics, geopolitics. We have the border. We have to deal with big companies whose budgets are bigger than our own country's budgets and so on. And we have our society at large where our people are uneasy. Some of them are more vocal because they are in the opposition, but I'm reliably informed that even among the supporters of the ruling party, people are uncertain. People are on the edge. People are watching the country transform, but not seeing themselves in that transformation. And so, therefore, we, if we follow the rule of thumb, the leader or leaders have to be able to absorb that energy and turn it into leadership. What is it about your social and political upbringing that you think equips you to absorb the energies and the challenges and the complexities of the present?
Well, Dr. Hanks, it is a broad combination of a number of things. Despite um, what people believe, and people see you now, in my opinion, as what my father would say, after your parents them sweat and suffer, and they see you now as a lawyer, they see you now as presumptively um, a middle class person. They fail to recognize your formative years, the years of sacrifice, your years of um, commitment and work. I tell people off the bat, just like you, Dr. Hines, I come from a very ordinary Guyanese family that would have experienced want and the struggles of life. Um, I understand the importance of staying the course. I understand the importance of sacrificing, giving up of yourself. I understand the importance of working hard, the importance and the value of education, and the important role that education plays in the empowerment of somebody and the release that it offers you from the circumstances that grip, um, grip people. I grew up in a family in which I was always told by my father, and particularly my mother, that Roysdale, you have to go to school, you have to educate yourself, you have to be the one to break the confines of poverty and limits that exist around you. And I was always encouraged to do so. The fact that I have become a lawyer today and a senior counselor today, I have not come from any sort of wealth or any sort of spoon circumstances. I come from, as I indicated, an ordinary family. And therefore, I bring to bear a consciousness, a commitment to seeing people free themselves from the grip of poverty, from the circumstances that encapsulate them in this society. I believe that it's not appropriate simply to say that you are now a qualified lawyer, senior counsel, and so on, that you no longer have an obligation to the people of the country, to your community. I am committed to leading and offering my skills and commitment. That is why, Dr. Hines, you would have seen over the last 4 years since I became a member of parliament, you would have had numerous interviews. But those interviews would always been centered around me undertaking some challenge, particularly through the courts, towards the advancement of our rights as citizens of this country, to expand them and to empower the people. And I believe that that is a significant role that I would have contributed to the life of the country, particularly over the last few years.
Roysdale Forde here tonight talking about his social origins as the son of a poor family coming through and using education as a form of social mobility and seeing that as an asset that is important to deal with the challenges of this time and connecting with our people in this era. He's stressing that that social upbringing, that social origin, the education as a means of social mobilization will serve him in good stead as a leader. Roysdale, I am going to go now way out left field, left field, left field. And I'm going to ask you a straight question because it's bothering me. It's bothering Guyanese people. I walk the streets, I hear them, and it's bothering people here on this life tonight. The negative campaigning. And let me come back a little because Dr. Henry Jeffrey this week in his column, I don't know if you would have read it, tried to make a distinction between negative campaigning and dirty campaigning. And his argument was that negative campaigning is not that bad. It's not bad, but it's dirty campaigning. Would you agree that would you agree that the campaign for your party leadership has gone dirty?
Dr. Hines, dirty is a mild description of it. It is inappropriate and unacceptable. We would have seen what has been happening over the past number of weeks. On each and every occasion where I had to interface with the public, where I had to deal with any party issue in relation to any comrade, I cannot be said to have even on any instance participated in that sort of dirty campaigning. But on the contrary, I have been the subject of dirty campaigning. I've been the subject of numerous assaults, patent lies, complete misinformation, continuously emanating largely from the supporters of Mr. Norton. We could see.
Roysdale, let me cut you there because I have been following and I have seen dirty campaigning from some of your surrogates, some of Norton's surrogates, some of Amanza surrogates. So I don't think it's fair because I want you to address this as a leader without pointing fingers because I think this thing, this dirty campaign is setting a bad precedence for political parties because it's giving democracy a bad name. Clearly, the PNC is engaged in a democratic process. But it seems that one of the outcomes of this democratic process is this dirty campaign that comes from all three of the campaigns. So anyhow, I just wanted to interject there.
But I didn't get to finish those.
All right, sorry.
I didn't get to finish. So I'm saying that I received and I observed in relation to me significant dirty campaigning from supporters of Mr. Norton. That is a fact, and you would have confirmed that. I was going on to say that similarly, there would be persons who support me and would have probably supported Ms. Manza Walton Desir, who can also be accused of engaging in the same activity. The difference, Dr. Hines, between myself and Mr. Norton in relation to this activity is that there is no instance where I can be said to have made any swipe, any statement that is disrespectful or unbecoming in relation to any of the candidates. Dr. Hines, on the 28th of March, after announcing that I have an interest in contesting for the leadership of the party, and after speaking in the most respectful manner in relation to Mr. Norton, within 10 to 15 minutes of that press conference or that event, Mr. Norton launched a barrage of an attack on me, making all sorts of odious inferences in relation to myself. We don't want to point out where things go off track. And for me, being very objective tonight, it went off track. By the time I finished making a statement, Mr. Norton went on a press conference, and since then, we have gone down a terrible path. It's one thing to have surrogates out there who you have no control over, and I understand Mr. Norton's plight. I understand Mr. Amanza Wharton disease plight, and I've had to endure it. In many instances, I would have called persons and tell them that, this is unacceptable. Don't do this or don't do that. Even in relation to people that I don't even know, but people who happen to say, well, they're supporting Forde, so they take a liberty to run out there and run amok. But what we would have seen in particular instances, and then find it very disturbing, and this in itself would have set the dangerous tone for the campaign, where known members of the party, senior persons in the party, would have taken public positions which would constitute dirty campaigning and an offensive campaigning. We had the instance where Prince Holder, the party regional chairman and the father of the current chairman of the party, posted that we must not enter Region 2, he's going to come to protest us. He called he called Annette Ferguson and Natasha Singh Lewis despicable names and posted it all over social media. And this is a known party functionary. So these are some of the things that would have contributed to the circumstances. I believe that it has been a very unacceptable campaign, to put it that way, and it has not added value to the cause of internal democracy in the party.
Have you spoken directly to Mr. Norton and Ms. Desir about these developments? Have you spoken privately to them? I'm not interested in what you all talk about if you spoke, but I just wanted to know if you felt that, as someone mindfully did, that it was part of your responsibility to really talk to the other principals.
We have had no formal sit-down conversation in relation to these issues, but I am aware and I have been a part of an email trail which we would have communicated, seeking to have a way forward in relation to the campaign. So there'd be that role, and I would have participated in that. But there'd be no direct face-to-face conversation on these issues between myself and Mr. Norton. Amanza and I would have spoken from time to time in relation to how the campaign was evolving in terms of what you consider and what I would agree tonight to be dirty campaigning.
Do you think it's too late for the three of you to get together, either all three of you, or you and Norton, or you and Amanza separately? Do you think it's too late for some kind of intervention on the part of the three of you?
No, I don't believe that any intervention which is meant to be conducive to the development of the party or in the party's interest would ever be too late. We are approaching this Congress. We are confident that next year at maximum will be an elections year. We need to ensure that the party emerges from this Congress not only as a dynamic institution, but as a united institution. I have my personal reservations as to whether and to what degree we can emerge actually united. having regard to the circumstances of the campaign, having regard to what would have taken place in terms of the internal democratic process, so to speak. So um, we will have to speak if it is necessary. I think it is appropriate to have those sort of conversations.
Very well. Roysdale, let's get back to some issues. I noticed you're joined by um Obratu Narain, the former mayor of Georgetown, and who is a senior member of your team. Good evening to you, Pandit.
Hi, Dr. Hines. A pleasant good evening to you and your viewers.
I saw you 2 weeks ago on the picket line, and I told you I need some prayers.
All of us need the prayers.
Pandit, tell me, you are a straight up guy, and you, I consider persons like yourself to be very important to this process in the PNC, because let me be frank, I can be frank on these matters. You are an Indian Guyanese in an African Guyanese party. That comes with its challenges. Um, and you are not an Indian Guyanese who's quiet. You're speaking out. It is clear that you love your party, um, and you're not afraid to speak out. You're supporting Roysdale Forde. The last time around, you support Aubrey Norton. This time around, you're supporting Roysdale Forde. Talk to us. Why the switch?
There, there, there
Switch at all?
there are many reasons. There are many reasons, Dr. Hines, and I respect Mr. Norton as my leader still. But the Constitution of the People's National Congress give us that door to support a leader. And the reason why I decided to support Comrade Aubrey Norton back then, 2021, because I have seen the fire in his stomach and his belly that he could have bring the PPP down to the knees. And you know what I said? I would show every inch and support, give support to Mr. Aubrey Norton. After taking up that office, I haven't seen that fire anymore. I've listened to Mr. Norton many times on your show as well, where he spoke about street protests and so on. I disagree with those things because in this country, the PPP government only understand one thing. It is protests because they don't listen. You can issue what statement you want. You can write what letter you wish to write to the government, and you can call the government out, and they would not even pay attention to you. I have seen this for the past years with this administration. We cannot sit down and policy over personality. I always believe that, whether it is in a political party or in national government, policy over personality. I have nothing against Mr. Norton. I believe he has a wide knowledge in politics, but at times we must able to hold our leaders accountable on their words, their promises that they made to us. I throw my support behind Forde because of these 12 things that
And if
identify.
the operator can hold on, if the operator can take down the comments, because I don't want comments tonight on the screen. Yes, go ahead,
If
Pandy.
this 12 points that is here behind this card, these are the reason why I supported Forde, because I believe in government, out of government, our party supporters must able to sustain their family. We must able as leaders, whether in government or out of government, be with them, walk with them, and ensure that they survive this fight. Rebuilding, empower the youths. I believe youths got a very important role to play, Dr. Hines. The elders got an important role to play, and the elders can able to mold people like myself and other youths out there to be better politicians in the future. I have nothing against Mr. Norton. I have nothing against my party. My party, it is in my cells in my body. I will defend my party at any time, at all costs. And like I said, policy over personality. So those are the reasons why I supported Mr. Forde at this Gurung. And whether Mr. Norton win the Congress or not, my aim now, after Sunday, is to 2025 election. We have to um, work together to go to an election to defeat the PPP at all costs. I believe that call for togetherness, and like you make mention earlier, that if as a leader we expect some kind of call or some kind of communication, whether who win the Congress, that look, the Congress is finished, the Congress is over, the campaign is over, and we need to get ourselves together now to defeat the PPP government at all costs.
Before I bring back Roysdale Pandit, you're a spiritual man. You are a man of the cloth, and Roysdale and I have been talking about the dirty campaigning, and I asked him whether he had been in a meeting with the other two principals. Have you tried? I know you're supporting Roysdale, but have you tried as a spiritual leader to try to bring these three leaders together, to cool down the temperature a little bit and get the campaign back on some kind of non-dirty path?
Dr. Hines, I can say this much. I played a role in my Hindu religion, my temples, that I am the head priest of the Mahasabha. But I want to say this much to you. I look upon the leader. If you know that we are going out the line, whether Roysdale, Amanza, or his supporters, or himself, is a leader. Mr. Roysdale Forde, Amanza, let us have a meeting. And let us meet and discuss this thing and come out publicly and condemn these nonsense. That kind of leadership I'm looking for, Dr. Hines. It's like you. You got something on your chest, you call us out. Whether we agree or disagree, right? And you pick up your phone and call. If we issue a statement, you will pick up your phone. Pandit, I didn't mean it this way. We can able to rectify it, Pandit. I respect you, Dr. Hines, for that. Because you know what? You are a leader. Don't hide behind doors. And I said this to Roysdale. I said this to Amanza. I said this to before I demitted the office, I met with Cormac Aubrey Norton, my leader. And no one ever communicate these things. You see that support of Roysdale, support of Amanza, support of Mr. Norton continue to bash each other. Fake profile have been formed to bash your own party members. Those fake profiles should have formed since 2020 when we imposed the government installed PPP. There was no fake profile for bashing the government, but you find fake profile to bash your own party cormats and talk ill things about them. Bash the PPP, bash all the nonsense they're doing in all the ministries in this country. I don't believe in nasty campaign. I don't believe in any tarnishing people reputation. I believe that we campaign clean on policy over personality, and we must be able to move forward with this party, the People's National Congress Reform, Dr. Hines.
As the old men and women in my village and the other villages would say, so to speak. So to speak. Thank you very much. Roysdale, let me bring you back in here because I want to expand somewhat on this issue of coalition politics, because the last time the PNC tasted office, it was as a result of a coalition. It was the brainchild of Robert Corbyn, who after the 2006 election decided, look, the way to go is coalition politics. He called the WPA, which was the nemesis of the PNC, bitter enemies, and the two parties sat down and they came up with the APNU. the AFC then said the road and the ground was set. After saying that they wouldn't join with the PNC or the PPP, the fact that the PNC had gotten into a coalition with the WPA made it easier for the AFC to come on board, and the rest is history. We were given power between 2015 and 2020. The jury's still out on how that power was snatched away in 2020. As we go forward, what is your position on? Okay, what are you going to do different this time around to ensure that the coalition is the way to go, first of all, if you agree, and to avoid the kind of fracturing? Because we saw immediately after the election, the WPA walked away from the APNU, then the AFC walked away from the non-parliamentary coalition. Recently, we saw some of the individuals in the APNU, in a sense, expelling the PNC. And not I say individuals are not parties, because I am contending there were only two real parties in the APNU, and you don't have to agree with me. And what is left there are individuals. And the APNU charter made allowances for individuals to join, so nothing is wrong with that. But they basically expelled the PNC. The thing is fractured. If you agree that coalition politics is the way to go, as leader of the PNC, what are you going to do differently?
Well, Dr. Hines, the first thing that I will do is to ensure that the extant members of the coalition have a meeting, agree on the fact that the People's National Congress reform is the strongest party in the coalition, and whilst leveraging its strength and its influence in the coalition, seek to mediate the situation so as not to smother and suppress the parties in the coalition. I believe that as a member of that party, the People's National Congress Reform, it is the most dynamic opposition party currently in the country. I will ensure that we develop an agenda for action grounded in work that the coalition partners will have to do across the length and breadth of the country. I would engage in an activity which would ensure that the coalition partners fetch some of the burden of being part of the coalition. We will have to ensure that we strengthen the coalition and broaden the coalition to include other segments and elements of the society. So I am committed to coalition politics. I don't think that we have done significant work on the coalition as a mechanism to ensure that we return to power. I would have paid attention to your comments over the past years, particularly from 2020 onwards, where you had expressed your dissatisfaction with the state of the coalition in terms of the work that it has been doing and the involvement and the connections which are necessary for a vibrant coalition.
Roysdale Forde here. Roysdale, Pandit raised the question of public protest as a form of struggle. And that has been in the news ever since the leader of the PNC, the current leader, Mr. Norton, was on this program and expressed some reservations about public protests as we know them. I want to be fair to him that he did not rule out protests, but public protest marches as we know them, he expressed some reservations about them. I want you to address that question in terms of public protest, because it really resonated with the base, with people. Some of them are PNC, some of them are not PNC, but they seem to think that the PNC has not gotten it right when it comes to public protests since 2020?
Dr. Hanks, I believe that protests, public protests, is an important part of the armory of an oppressed people, is an important part of the armory of um, the political party and political parties, particularly the People's National Congress Reform, as an opposition party in setting and advancing its agenda. We would have seen numerous abuses over the last 4 years, which would not have been met with any significant form of public protest by the opposition parties, by the coalition parties. I think that that is a grave um, effect in terms of our political matrix and plans that we would have engaged in over the past few years. The concerns expressed that people will come into the protests and disturb it and try to throw it off track. Those are real concerns. They are real considerations, but I don't think that they are so severe and so important and weighty considerations as to rule out completely the employment of public protests as a device. Dr. Hines, why is it only that public protest is an issue in relation to the opposition? We would have seen from the period 2015 to 2020 very targeted and very effective at times based on the PPP's agenda, measurement of their agenda, protests over those periods, over those years. Um, we did not hear the leadership of the PPP saying that protest is a bad thing. They employed it. They employed it to advance their agenda, both in relation to political matters and in relation to industrial issues for which affected their support base. Speaking particularly about the GAWU Union. We had a glorious opportunity in relation to supporting the Guyana Teachers Union and the teachers who were suffering, who were being deprived consistently of a livable wage, to be given the sort of political coverage and support which would be necessary to advance their interests. I have no confidence, Dr. Hines, that this conciliation process will yield anything of substance for our teachers. I believe that they will be left out there to scrum around to survive. We have provided them with no guidance politically, and I think when we come to deal with our labor issue, we can't say that politics don't exist. As I indicated earlier, the fact that we have political parties in Guyana, each and every political party, basically the senior or older parties, came out to the labor movement. So there is a connection that cannot be separated. When workers go on the street to ask for a livable wage, that is not a purely industrial issue. That is a political issue. The government's response has been not a response to an industrial question. It is a response to a political question. The government's position to provide resources to one group of people, to deny them another group of people resources, is a political question. And the opposition would have gotten it wrong to say that it is not a political question, that this is an industrial question. The teachers must be left out there on their own. I think that it is an unfortunate development which would have occurred. Our teachers are back in the classroom without a cent to their names and their pockets. They are exactly in the same situation of deprivation, and this is a political issue which the opposition should have supported, I believe, in a stronger and more robust way.
Roysdale, I really have to press you on that question, not simply because I have sympathy with that position, because I share that view. I do share that view that For the union, the strike is industrial. But for the rest of us, that strike was clearly political. If you were leader of the PNC, what would you have done to help the teachers' union in this struggle? Practical question. And I'm asking that question because you could become the leader after Friday. And I don't think this teachers' issue is done. I think the teachers are going to be back on strike.
Dr. Hanks, yes, yes, I see the teachers
after.
Dr. Hanks?
Some static here.
Yes, Dr. Hanks.
Yes, I was saying, you heard my question?
Yes, you were asking what I would have done to support the teachers.
The teachers strike. Or what would you do if you become leader after the elections on this weekend, and the teachers were to go on strike when they come back to work in September? What would you do as leader of the PNC to better help them this time around?
Dr. Hines, apart from the legal work which we would have done to advance the interests of the trade union movement, I would have ensured that I sought the presence and the interactions with the government to outline to them first, as a step one, the importance and the need to have livable wages paid to the teachers and to public servants. Secondly, I think it would have been appropriate to engage and sensitize in a number of public meetings across the country the correlation between the government's conduct and the deprivation that the teachers and public servants would have been experiencing in terms of the impact it would have been having on the educational system, in the impact it would have been having on the country at large. I would have approached the private sector and brought to their attention the impact that this strike is having on the teachers and on the country at large. I would have sought the international involvement of the national trade unions to support the issue in relation to the teachers. I would have sought generally to internationalize it. I would have called on the political parties and the coalitions, party members, and parties itself to support the strike by actively going on the picket line and being supportive of the strike that would have been engaging the country's attention and gripping the country. I would have encouraged and supported sister and allied unions who would have been suffering. Similarly, the Guyana Public Service Union to join the strike and to be partners in the cause for a livable wage. I would have sought to expand it and make it clearly and more discernibly a political issue in terms of the government's allocation of resources in a consistent and daily way.
Thank you very much, Roysdale. And I am very thankful for your answer. Roysdale, before, during the last campaign for leaders of the PNC, you were reported to have said that should Norton become leader, it would have a negative impact on other ethnic groups in the PNC. I want to be clear that I don't misquote you. That your reporter said Norton would have, in a sense, turned the party into a quote-unquote black party. I may be wrong. You can correct me. But I've seen over the last 2 years that you have been very forthright, perhaps even more forthright than Norton himself, on the issue of racial discrimination against African Guyanese, which has become real in the last 2 years. And I would argue that you have gone further than Norton on that issue in terms of a clear position of where you stand on discrimination against African Guyanese. Have you evolved in the last 2 years? And if so, why?
Dr. Hines, I am grateful for the compliment that I would have gone further than the leader of the party in terms of standing up and articulating and speaking about racial discrimination against African Guyanese. But the premise of the question is false and inaccurate. I never stated that if Mr. Norton become the leader of the People's National Congress, that he will become a black or African Guyanese party. What I said, and it is reported, you could just click on it
No, I stand corrected. I did say that I wasn't sure, but I'm glad you
what,
addressed it.
what I spoke about in 2021, that would have been, is the fact that the party, the People's National Congress reform, must not present itself as a party for one ethnic group.
Mhm.
That it must not present itself as a party for one ethnic group. And I do not share the view that the articulation and advancement of the interest and the political interest of African Guyanese means that we are only on one track and cannot do so for other ethnic groups in our society. I see no conflict between articulating the views and the
We seem to have some bandwidth problem there with Mr. Ford. I hope that is corrected in a couple of seconds.
I'm
In
of, I'm of the view that it need not be one and not the other. In terms of where we are, I have come to the conclusion over the past 2 years that this government is indeed um, a racist government. I've seen their um, operation and the way they go about it in a number of different ways, for which I've confronted it in terms of public statements by me, columns and articles that I would have written. You would have been present when I made, I believe, a very important presentation uh, in Buxton on the Constitution and the role that the Constitution plays in hindering or empowering African Guyanese rights and rights of people. If you remember that.
Yes, I remember. Yes.
So that is my view in relation to those issues. I don't believe that we need to um, advance a position of one ethnic group to the exclusion of the other. And while I was cautioning not to Mr. Norton, but to the party as a whole, having come out of a very um, difficult electoral period, that we need to capture and recognize at all times that we must function as the party that will be representative of all the ethnic groups, a party that will be able to be in coalition with different interests, who will be having, for example, preferences to attract particular support bases that will cover the ethnic divide of the country. To the expense of others. Because ultimately we want to face an electorate and to win all the votes possible.
Mr. Rice, there for some rapid questions here. The PNC under Norton's leadership has been hesitant about the oil contract with some sections of our society, or well, not our society, but some sections of the elites are pushing that the contract should be renegotiated, etc., etc. Norton has been kind of circumspect on it. Will you, if you become leader, deviate from the Norton's approach, or will you take a different approach to the oil contract issue?
I my view, Dr. Hines, is that in relation to the oil contract, we need to put the Guyanese people first. I will be a bit more forthright than Mr. Norton in terms of calling for a review of the contract. I will be a bit more forthright what may be the factors involving um, an approach like that adopted by Mr. Norton. But we have to look at what is happening in the country. Where is the key sentiments of frustration in the society? Where our people are being excluded by virtue of resources that is coming into the country, and we must be able to hold the PPP as the current government and the international investors accountable to ultimately to what is in the best interest of the Guyanese people.
Mr. Norton faced the dilemma of, at the last local government election, of staying away from an election with a suspect electoral machinery, or participating in the elections with that machinery so as not to allow the PPP to capture all of the municipalities. Nothing has changed so far as the electoral machinery is concerned. There's still no agreement on biometrics, on a clean voters list, for example, and elections are coming. How are you going to deal if you become leader and you'll be faced with the same dilemma? How are you going to deal with it?
Well, I hope um, on election you certainly
We seem to be having some. Yes, go ahead.
I just want to back up a little bit, Dr. Hayes. In
Yeah.
relation to dealing with this issue, it requires the development of a social movement um, in relation to confronting it at a national and an international level. What have happened largely over the last couple of years is that we have not developed, and I heard you previously agree with me, but we have not developed the sort of compact movement, social movement that will be able to address and push for changes to the electoral system and biometrics in a sustained way. So those are critical things that will have to be undertaken from day one. Soon as Congress is over, whether Mr. Norton retains leadership, whether someone else um, is elected to that office, that must be a priority issue. So as we get closer to elections, we will be in a better position to say we would have put in the sort of political work, the sort of education work, the sort of international lobbying, and impressing the interests, just stakeholders in addressing these issues.
As leader of the PNC, are you going to be more forceful in calling and working for repealing the Cybercrime Act?
Dr. Hines, I believe that the Cybercrime Act is a completely unconstitutional piece of legislation. Um, Whether we move to repealing it,
We're we're getting some static from this.
into proceedings in the court to challenge it on the basis of its unconstitutionality. So I'm in agreement with you that that piece of legislation must go and go completely.
If you were to win the leadership this weekend, are you prepared to include Ms. Desir and Mr. Norton in your leadership team?
Certainly, Dr. Hines, is not only including Miss Walton Desir and Mr. Norton in the leadership team, is ensuring that we capture all the persons in the party would have had different interests, different positions, and a different skill set, whether or not they're supportive of us. We face a serious challenge at this time, a serious juncture in our history. We need to move beyond the internal pettiness, the internal differences, and really ensure that the party is led in a way that all persons and all members of the party feel involved and they have a room and a role to play within the great organization.
If you do not succeed in becoming the leader, are you prepared to work with whoever is elected, whether it's Norton or Walton? Are you prepared to work with them at the level of leadership? I'm not talking here about advisor and all that story that happened after the last election. I'm talking here, are you prepared to work as part of the team with whoever wins the election?
Yes, I am, Doctor.
You, Roysdale, are you?
Yes, Doctor. Yes, Doctor Hanks, I've answered you. I said yes, I'm prepared to do so. I'm committed.
You are prepared. Any conditions?
No, no conditions whatsoever.
No conditions whatsoever. Pandit is still there. Let me bring Pandit in for his closing thoughts, and then I'll get your closing thoughts because we're running out of time. Pandit, I'm sorry that I didn't afford you more time tonight, but I will have you back. I will have you back to have a more extensive conversation with you. But as we go out tonight, what are your closing thoughts?
Dr. Hines, I am grateful for the few minutes. I would just want to let the public know that the PNC Constitution stands strong, and I am ready to work with my party at any level. And I want to say to our supporters, our members, the bashing of Ms. Nazir and Royce the to the PPP. Let us work together to defeat the PPP at the 2025 election. I will work and I prepare myself to do my best at any level for my country and party and my people of this nation.
Roysdale, your closing thoughts?
Dr. Hanks, as I started, I would like to end on that note. To remind the members of the People's National Congress Reform and the citizens of this country that we face a very important moment in the history of the party and in the nation's life. We must confront the challenges that we face both internally as a party so that we become a better united party, be able to confront the challenges that face the people of this country. We must be able to move from the point where we are to ensure that we place the best interest of the people of the country above our egos and above our personal interests. As we approach this Congress, it is incumbent on each and every member in different aspects right now, and whom the membership of the party would have nominated to be elected to different offices. I ask that you engage in a contemplative and reflective process to determine who you would like to lead you. But at the end of the day, we remain comrades and we'll be able to move forward as a united organization, as a united party to confront the PPP and to win the elections in 2025. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Roysdale. Thank you very much on a positive note on which to, and thank you very much for coming on. Thank you, Pandit, for joining us, albeit only for a few minutes. But I wish you guys luck at the Congress and at the election. And here's hoping that when the dust is settled, that we can get down to the work that both you and Pandit have referred to, and that is to move to rid our country of the present government and pave the way for something that is better than what we have at the moment. Thank you all very much. And thanks to you all in the audience for staying with us. I know you have, there are supporters from all three candidates on here, and then there are independents, those who are not supporters, and that's what the democratic process is about. We have a chance to hear from the candidates tomorrow night. Amanza Walton Desir is invited, and hopefully she turns up, and we can have as good a conversation as we had tonight with Mr. Forde, and then of course on Thursday night the Aubrey Norton is going to be here, and I'm trying to see if I can do a kind of double header to get Nigel Hughes on. Tomorrow night we're going to start at 6:30, so we'll start half an hour early. We start half an hour early tomorrow night. So I'll see you all tomorrow evening at 6:30. 6:30. Good luck.